Terry McLaurin has officially requested a trade. We'll tell you what that means for his dynasty value next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can also check him out over on SI. And he's holding a championship belt there, Fabs.
How about that? My buddy Matt Walsh over at Trophy Smack hooked us up. And so we've got a little Locked On Dynasty podcast bling. Wait, is mine upside down? Yes, it is. So if you could see it on YouTube. Yeah. Tremendous stuff. Tremendous.
We should tell the listeners before we get started that you and I will be at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio next weekend. So if you see us, come up and talk to us. We'd love to meet you guys. But
definitely. Even Giants fans and Eagles fans and Commanders fans, come on up.
Yeah, maybe not the Eagle fans, but everybody else, you're good to go. All right, so let's talk about that NFC East. Terry McLaurin requested a trade on Thursday from the Washington Commanders after not getting his deal. It seems like the big hang up here is that he wants to be paid more than DK Metcalf, kind of in that CeeDee Lamb range of 33, 34 million a year. But that Courtland Sutton deal that came out last week, which is paying him like $23 million a year, is kind of messing everything up. So my question to you is, first of all, do you think Terry McLaurin gets traded? And what does it mean for his dynasty value now as we stand here on August 1st?
The Commanders almost made it to the Super Bowl last year. And Terry McLaurin was a big reason why. And he was also a big reason why Jaden Daniels succeeded so much as a passer. He was obviously his biggest target. If they trade McLaurin, their wide receiver group is not attractive. You've got Deebo Samuel, Noah Brown, Michael Gallup, Luke McCaffrey. I mean, it's bad. And if they want to win the division, get back to the postseason, run it back to maybe potentially the NFC Championship game, they can't trade Terry McLaurin. There's nobody out there. You're going to sign Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper at this point. So, but here's the thing. I also don't think he deserves to be paid like CeeDee Lamb. I think he's probably closer to a Courtland Sutton, maybe a little bit better, but closer to a Courtland Sutton. He's also 30 years old. And so how many more good years do you get out of him? Now, listen, he's been great. He's had 5 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. So he's going to have teams that are interested. But I mean, the Commanders got to think that they are going to be in trouble at wide receiver. And if Terry McLaurin's not there, as great as Jaden Daniels is, that hurts his value. And it obviously would hurt the value of this team from a fantasy perspective.
I'm with you. Now, I do think Washington is in a tough spot here, right? Because McLaurin will be 30, I think, during this season. And if you look at, some of the recent trends, like there's a lot of receivers who are of, let's say, his caliber, like not quite the super uber elite stars, but that next tier down, they've kind of started to fall off at age 30, whether that's, somebody like Amari Cooper, who I think is just 30 now. Stephon Diggs has gone down quite a bit since he's turned 30. Like DeAndre Hopkins is another example.
Julio Jones.
Now, I think he's going to be okay, right? Because I think his game is going to translate well. But I also think Washington doesn't necessarily want to pay him 4 years into the future and make him one of the highest paid receivers in the league.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of, like, you remember when Sean Alexander was towards the end of his career in Seattle and the Seahawks decided to give him this huge contract when he was like 28 or 29, and he never lived up to it because at that point he was going downhill. And that's what I think the Commanders are afraid of. Just like you said, do you want to pay a guy for the next, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, on an asset that could end up being a declining asset over the next several years? So yeah, they are in between a rock and a hard place, because if they don't trade him and he's just sitting out there, they are in trouble on the offensive side in the passing game. And if they do trade him, well, they're in trouble on the offensive side of the passing game because, again, like Deebo Samuel is a nice player and all, but listen, he's not.
He's a complimentary player at this point.
He's not an alpha. McLaurin's an alpha. So, the Commanders are in a lot of trouble. And to be quite honest with you, I'm writing up my sleepers and my bust over at Sports Illustrated. I've got Terry McLaurin as a bust. And I'm not saying that he's going to be terrible, but just coming off of what you consider a magical season, I think there's going to be some regression coming one way or the other. Now, if he does get traded, Marcus, the teams that I think he would be the best fit with from a fantasy perspective, and you could agree or disagree here, the Patriots would be a nice fit.
Well, that's been the most obvious connection. First of all, I'm just going to put this out there. I don't think Washington is trading Terry McLaurin.
I don't either.
It doesn't make any sense, right? Because the entire appeal of having a rookie, a young quarterback on a rookie contract is that you can pay everybody around him, right? So I think this ultimately gets resolved. This is just kind of what happens in these negotiations. Like, would it shock you if our guy Micah Parsons requests a trade in the next week because he's not getting a contract move? Like, just because a trade request is out there does not mean a trade is coming. Just to be clear,
it's a tactic that the agents use. That's what happens. So yeah, I mean, I would be, but even if he does come back to the Commanders and they are able to negotiate some sort of trade or some sort of new contract, I still don't know that he'll be as good last year. As he was last year. I think there's going to be some regression there. So, but
it does feel like his value has dropped a little bit. He's down to wide receiver 22 on Dynasty League football. My question for you, Fabs, and you mentioned the Patriots, is there anywhere else that Terry McLaurin could land if he were to be traded that would increase his value? Because I got to believe just about everywhere else his value is going to go down.
No, it's not. And anywhere else, he'll put a landmine on somebody else's value. Yeah. So, for example, like the Raiders could use a wide receiver. They don't really have an alpha. If he went there, obviously it would hurt Jacoby Myers, and it may hurt Brock Bowers a little bit. And Jack Besh would be maybe not even a draftable asset. I don't think the 49ers would make the move, but I don't know what's going on. Brandon Ayuk and McLaurin would be a nice fit in that offense. I can tell you that right now, if we're just talking about pure fantasy. The Jets don't have a second wide receiver, so that I don't think that's going to happen. But they don't have a number two, and McLaurin would come in, and I mean, he'd probably be like a 1-1A situation with Garrett Wilson, like we saw with Devontae Adams last season,
on an offense that we think is going to run the ball a ton.
Yeah, right, exactly. Again, these are not ideal, but these are the teams that need help at wide receiver. And then the Titans, I mean, they have Calvin Ridley and a washed up Tyler Lockett and a bunch of young guys. And obviously, Treylon Burks is no longer an option there anymore. So, he could go there and help the value of Cam Ward, and he would get plenty of targets because, again, I mean, Ridley right now is going to be a target hog. But his best case scenario, yeah.
What if he was the Chargers? I went with the Chargers because, to me, I think Terry McLaurin and Ladd McConkey actually fit together really well, right? Ladd is the underneath option. McLaurin is the deep, threat. And you have Herbert, who can be incredibly efficient. The Chargers have the cap space. But again, you're talking about a Greg Roman offense, which we've expressed our concerns about.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
But I do think if you're having a quarterback that could maximize his value, and maybe he doesn't need as many targets to be efficient there, but that's the one offense I think he could be awesome in.
I'm not saying that wouldn't be a good real football fit, but in fantasy, it wouldn't be a great fit. We've talked about this. I think some guy with a wig was on the show talking about, Laddie Daddy, the great Fabini, and talked about how McConkey's wide receiver 12 finish last year was the best finish any wide receiver has ever had in a Greg Roman offense. And then you're going to add Terry McLaurin into that mix on an offense that's still going to run the ball regardless.
I know.
And I watched Omarion Hampton last night, and I got so excited. I know it wasn't much. And I know he didn't do much, but my spidey senses were tingling like you wouldn't believe.
We're not going to break down the Hall of Fame game from last night because there's nothing to break down, except for the Chargers have a couple interesting down roster receivers. But listen, we're not doing that. We're going to wait till we get actual preseason football.
Yeah.
Let's talk about DK Metcalf, who has been really good in Steelers camp. Are you buying DK Metcalf in your dynasty leagues? We'll discuss that and more next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or you're planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. My family has used Monarch Money for about the last 9 months or so, and it's unbelievable how much money they've helped us save. We've got rid of some subscriptions, we've cut back on some of our spending, and now we are building some wealth. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Fab, let's talk about some more training camp buzz. And I want to start with DK Metcalf, where it seems like he's having a really good camp. We have some beat reporters that are believing he's going to put up big numbers. There was one beat reporter, Mark Caboli, who said he thinks DK is going to have 100 receptions this year. Just off the top, I don't really put a lot of stock into what beat reporters are predicting for stats, but I do think it's notable that he's having a really good camp. Are you buying Metcalf in Dynasty leagues?
I love him. I love him. And I have him ranked higher than most people. And I've got a bunch of trends and reasons why. And I'm sure Marcus is waiting with bated breath for me to tell you what those trends are. But first off, yes, Mark Caboli has been raving about the connection between Rodgers and Metcalf. He compared it to Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. Giddy up. Metcalf has had at least 8 targets in every single training camp, or at least 8 catches, in every single training camp practice. He signed a huge contract. They're going to get him the football. And then I look at Rodgers, and I kind of dug through the historical data for Rodgers and, what wide receivers have had success with him. And, he's 41 years old, Fabs. Okay, well, he was 40 last year. And Garrett Wilson finished as the 10th best wide receiver in fantasy football. And when Davante Adams was a Jet, in that time, it was 11 games, 6th best wide receiver in fantasy football. The year before, obviously, he got hurt, so there's no data from that year. And the year before that, his last year in Green Bay, his wide receivers were not good. Like, he had Allen Lazard and Christian Watson were his 2 best receivers. They were not good. But before that, Davante Adams, wide receiver 2. Davante Adams, wide receiver 1. Davante Adams in 2019 was the wide receiver 22, but he projected to be the wide receiver 2 based on the games he played because he only played in 12 games. The year before that, Davante Adams, wide receiver 3. We can go back. Jordy Nelson, 2016, wide receiver 2. Davante Adams in 2016, wide receiver 9. Randall Cobb in 2014, wide receiver 8. Jordy Nelson in 2014, wide receiver 3. Do you get my drift? This is not a player who goes out there and sinks the value of wide receivers. In fact, he floats it to maybe its highest potential. And again, he's 41 years old. And after this year, he probably won't be wearing a Steelers uniform. But I would also tell people this. How many times have the Steelers really had just an awful quarterback? Okay. They had Russell last year. Russell's not what he used to be, but still a better than average quarterback. They had Justin Fields as well. Now, Kenny Pickett, yeah, that was bad. They had Roethlisberger for a long time. Tommy Maddox was a good statistical quarterback. Cordell Stewart was a good statistical quarterback, at least from a fantasy perspective. Mike Tomczak, okay, yuck. And then before that, Neil O'Donnell. So,
where's Bubby Brister? You missed Bubby Brister in there.
No, I only went back to 1991 in order to avoid Bubby Brister. Right. But the bottom line here is that the Steelers, next year, they're either going to somehow bring in a rookie quarterback, and hopefully will be better than Kenny Pickett, or they'll grab somebody from the free agent market. Time will tell. But I don't think the Steelers are going to go into a season, especially, with Mike Tomlin. They took a shot on Kenny Pickett. It didn't work out. All right. But we've also seen too, that even in a quarterback situation is not ideal. Hello, Giants and Malik Neighbors last year. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a death sentence for a wide receiver. It's not great on the surface, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a death sentence. So I am a big fan of DK Metcalf. He's still in the prime of his career. I still say he's got what, Marcus, 3-4 more good years in him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is going to be an exceptional year where if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and DK Metcalf stays healthy, we are potentially looking at a top 10 to 12 wide receiver.
So I also love DK Metcalf, and it's just because I think he's a really good player. It wasn't that long ago, and I'm not joking. I think it was 2020, 2021, where DK Metcalf was the #1 overall receiver on Dynasty League football in Dynasty startups. Like, we're not that far removed. He's 27. The Steelers paid big money to go out and get him. They gave up some draft capital. He's going to be their wide receiver 1 for the next several years. Now, I think this year he could get more targets maybe than ever before, because you look at the rest of that receiver core. It's Calvin Austin, who is a fine player, Roman Wilson, who did nothing last year, a washed up Robert Woods, and that's it. Like that's the receiving core. And
he's going to have the most competition for targets from the tight ends, from Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth,
which is fine.
Which is a very, very good thing for DK Metcalf.
Yeah. Now, I think there are some concerns for me, like Rodgers looks great in July, like because he's healthy. What is it going to look like when we get to December and January? And is he going to have the legs to be able to throw the ball deep? We'll see. But I'm not basing anything on what's going to happen this year.
Get him some ayahuasca. He'll be fine, Marcus.
I just think DK Metcalf is good. And I think regardless of the quarterback situation, because you're right, it's probably going to be different next year. He's wide receiver 28 right now. And you can get the #1 wide receiver on a team that has no other real competition for targets. He's going to make big plays down the field. And the last thing, and this is actually the thing that makes me feel the best about DK Metcalf, is Arthur Smith. And I know we don't think of Arthur Smith as like a high-flying passing guy, but if you look at like A.J. Brown during his rookie year, had over 1,000 yards in like 10 starts with Arthur Smith. You look at what A.J. Brown did in year 2 with Arthur Smith, put up big, big numbers. Even someone like George Pickens last year averaged like 67 yards per game when he was healthy. And that was with 2 different quarterbacks. Like, I do think Arthur Smith, when he has a good receiver, is going to find ways to get that guy the ball.
Especially when he's getting paid that much money. So, yeah. I agree. I'm all in on DK. I dig him. If I can get DK Metcalf as my wide receiver 2, I mean,
I'm fine with that.
Yes, please.
It's fine.
Sign me up.
Yeah, and again, you might even be able to get him as your wide receiver 3 right now. Like, that's how low the value is. We've seen some recent trades where he's being traded for like Jordan Addison straight up. And I'm a big Jordan Addison fan. I really like Jordan Addison. I would just prefer DK Metcalf.
Me too.
All right. What about George Pickens? George Pickens is the guy that Pittsburgh ended up trading. He's wide receiver 31 right now, but we've got some trades for Pickens for Metcalf straight up.
Pickens for I want Metcalf.
I'm with you. This just feels like a good time to buy low, because there are going to be managers in your leagues that are worried about the long-term future in Pittsburgh. He's just too good. He's going to get the targets there.
I don't know what George Pickens is playing in 2026. I have no idea.
Bingo. All right. Let's talk about the Jets running back situation, because Braelon Allen has looked fantastic during training camp. Are you worried about Breece Hall? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're out sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one is a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, there's some days out on the golf course or off it where you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and stay energized. Listen, I'm going to go out and play golf as soon as we're done with this podcast. I'm already feeling like I need a little bit of a boost. 5 Hour Energy is going to help me get through that round. And golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. And the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without having to chase down the bev cart. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. So whether you're out meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 into 36, get the energy boost you need to power through. order transfusion-flavored 5-hour energy shots today. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, Fabs, let's talk about the Jets running back situation, because this is one we've been paying attention to for a while. Braelon Allen has apparently looked fantastic in camp. So does Breece Hall. He feels 100% healthy going into the year. What are you doing with these two running backs?
Well, clearly, Breece Hall is still the guy to target, but I have my concerns about him. And I was a big fan of him coming in. I remember having a conversation with LaDainian Tomlinson when he got drafted, name drop, and LT was just in love with the kid. And so his breakout year of 2023 was phenomenal. He was the RB2 overall. But let's break it down in terms of what he did in his first 14 games compared to what he did in his last 3 games of that season. Remember, Zach Wilson was under center for the majority of those first 14 games.
Yuck.
And Breece Hall was the RB11. He averaged 13.6 points per game. Good. It's good. It's not elite. And then over the last 3 games, with no Zach Wilson, the Jets went to Trevor Siemian. And Trevor Siemian was check down Charlie. And when he checked down, he was checking down to Breece Hall. In those 3 games, Breece Hall saw 29 targets. And he scored 99.7 fantasy points. Marcus, that's 33.2 points per game. And that jacked him up to RB2. So for the majority of the season, he was like a low RB1 at 13.6. Those last 3 games with Siemian under center, he exploded in what was an unsustainable 3-game stretch. Last year, didn't finish in the top 15. The numbers were not as good. And Braelon Allen popped a few times. Isaiah Davis popped a few times. Right now, Breece Hall is getting drafted as the RB8. He's young. He's in an offense that's going to run the ball. That's what I like. I do have concerns that maybe Breece Hall, and likely, I would say Marcus has already had his best fantasy season and will never get back to the RB2 status that he had a couple of years ago. Doesn't mean that he can't be a nice low RB1 over the next few years. And, we don't know where he's going to end up either. I mean, playing for the New York Jets for the entirety of his career. We don't know that.
Well, I think that's a big thing for me. Do you think
we don't know that? So, he may be a guy that I'm looking to sell, honestly. And look at where Allen's going right now. I mean, he's the running back 49. He's being drafted like in the 140s, the late 140s. I would be going out and buying on Braelon Allen because he's not going to cost that much. And if you're in a startup, he's relatively cheap. RB 49 at 150. And Breece Hall, if I can get a Jets fan or somebody who loves him to, maybe flip me a first round pick or some combination of picks and players that I like, I would not be adverse to trading Breece Hall.
I'm with you. I've already traded him a couple different times over the last year in my dynasty leagues. And it's not because of talent, because I do think he's really talented. And you watch him play and you watch him run, and he is different, right? But what do you think the Jets are going to do long-term here? Because they've invested so much money into Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson. Jermaine Johnson's going to get a contract here in a little bit. It just seems like they are starting to pay out a lot of big money. And I wonder if they're going to give Breece Hall a ton of cash, considering they're not really ready to do that yet. Like, he's not the final piece that's going to take them over the top.
And they have Allen Davis waiting in the wings.
Yes. I have been wondering for a while, do you think there's a chance that we get into the season? And let's say we're into week 5.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going.
Right. We're into week 5 and Breece looks good, right? He's playing well, but the Jets are 1-3 or maybe, whatever the record is, right? And Braelon Allen just looks like, hey, this is the guy that's coming up. I think Braelon Allen's still only 21 years old.
Yeah, he was 20 last year.
Yeah. Could we see a team flip, let's say again, I'm going to use our Cowboys.
You want to say the Cowboys? I knew you were going to say the Cowboys.
There's other teams out there, right? But could we see a team like the Cowboys say, okay, we're going to give you a 4th round pick and a future pick for Breece Hall. And that way that opens the Jets up to using more Braelon out. I'm not predicting that, but I do think we're going to have those conversations if the Jets aren't very good this year.
Certainly, because what do they want to do with him long term? And they have 2 guys under control who are going to be cheap, and so when you look at it from that perspective, yeah, I mean, and also too, like again, the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. I don't want to go down that road because I will get angry. But there are certainly teams out there would like to have Breece Hall. I think the only issue with the Cowboys is, and now it's like we're on Locked On Cowboys, is that how the hell are they going to pay him? Because they're not going to be able to pay George Pickens.
That's why it's not going to be the Cowboys. But
they haven't paid Micah Parsons either, or Michael Parsons.
A team like the Cowboys. I was just using them as an example.
I don't know. I get it. But again, I think the bottom line here is that Breece Hall is coming with some risk, and Braelon Allen comes with very little risk, and he could potentially be a very nice reward.
All right. So what should you do with Breece Hall in your dynasty leagues? Because he is RB8 right now. He's being drafted at 27 overall. Are you trading him for like a guy that behind him, like Travion Henderson, or I was going to say Quinshon Judkins, but no. Or are you trying to flip him for a 1st round pick? Like, what's the best, if you're going to trade Breece Hall, what's the best way to do it?
I'm not giving him up for pennies on the dollar. So Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe asking a little too much, but that would be a player that I'd probably flip Breece Hall for because he's still a young running back who had an RB2 finish not too long ago. And if the team owner that you're talking to maybe hasn't seen the stats or listened to this program about Breece Hall and why, that 2023 season was probably an outlier because of those last 3 games, somebody may be in on him. And listen, you could sell it. Jets, you're going to run the ball. Breece Hall is going to be the guy. But if you also listen to Aaron Glenn, even before training camp started, he said they're going to use all 3. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to use, it's not going to be 33, 33, and 33%. Breece Hall is still going to lead this team in touches. At least I believe so. But listen, Breece Hall fumbles. Does Braelon Allen get more burn and get a chance to potentially take more of the workload? I think there's a lot of question marks with Breece Hall. And so if I can get a good young wide receiver, if I could get a 1st round pick and I have backfield depth, I am 100% looking into putting Breece Hall on the trade block.
All right. So a couple trades courtesy of Dynasty League football that have happened over the last week. The most common trade involving Breece Hall is Breece Hall for a 2026 1st round pick and then something else that's usually like a 3rd round pick in next year's draft. Would you do that?
If I thought that I could sustain a backfield without Breece Hall for this season, I would do that.
Okay. Another one. We've got Breece Hall in a late round pick for Drake London, straight up.
I love the Drake, dude. I love the Drake. Yeah, I'd do that.
Okay. Drake London for Marvin. Sorry, that's not Drake London. Marvin Harrison Jr. for Breece Hall in a 2026 2nd round pick.
No, I'd probably want to do it more straight up or give a 3rd.
Okay.
Because Breece Hall still has the potential to be every bit as good a running back as Marvin Harrison's upside is as a wide receiver.
Okay. And last one here, it's Breece Hall for T. Higgins in a 2026 2nd round pick.
That's intriguing. I'd still look to see if I could get something a little bit better than T. Higgins. Listen, I like T. Higgins, but he's never going to be an alpha. He dealt with injuries last year. And T. Higgins is getting drafted high.
I don't think you need to do that trade right now. I think once we get into the season and these running backs,
man.
Yeah. Because, and we always say this, right now is the worst time to be trading away your running backs because everybody's running back situation is good and healthy right now. Once we get into week 4 of the NFL season and we start to see, oh, hey, this rookie running back isn't playing as much as I thought, or hey, this veteran is completely washed, like J.K. Dobbins. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a name.
He's not washed. Would you
just
stop it?
I'm
He
just
averaged almost 15 points a game last year.
Well, there you go. I'm just saying, I think you should wait. If you're going to trade Breece Hall, wait until we get closer to the season or in season. I think that's when you're going to get the most value. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the podcast on YouTube. Download the show wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here on Monday.